Right now, the White House says it is looking into the mysterious string of disappearances and deaths of at least 10 high-profile American scientists. Now, many of them tasked with studying UFOs or nuclear research. All of them have either died or mysteriously vanished, dating back to mid-2023. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-hosts, Kayleigh McEnany and Harris Faulkner. And also joining us today, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, and Guy Benson, Fox News political analyst and host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. Now, these deaths and disappearances include several high-level astrophysicists, as well as research scientists, college professors, military leaders, and administrative assistants, and many on this list having top security clearance and a vast knowledge of America's top secrets. Now, the most recent official to disappear, retired Air Force General William McCasland, was last seen leaving his New Mexico home in February without his phone or prescription glasses. His disappearance came after aerospace engineer Monica Reza went missing in June while hiking in the Angeles National Forest in California. McCasland and Reza had been working together on a government-funded rocket materials project, which McCasland was overseeing. Our Peter Doocy asked White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about the suspicious pattern. Watch.
There are now 10 American scientists who have either gone missing or died since mid-2024. They all reportedly had access to classified nuclear or aerospace material. Is anybody investigating this to see if these things are connected?
I've seen the report, Peter. I haven't spoken to our relevant agencies about it. I will certainly do that and we'll get you an answer. If true, of course, that's definitely something I think this government and administration would deem worth looking into. So let me do that for you.
All right, Guy Benson, a lot of alarm bells ringing, certainly, and especially the concentration on shared projects as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is mysterious. It is concerning. You think about, like, police detective procedurals on TV where the grizzled detective says, I don't believe in coincidences. And this is a lot, right? These are a lot of different names. Who knows if these are connected in any way? Like, one of the names up there was an MIT professor who was killed during that Brown University shooting scenario, which was very bizarre, which, to my knowledge, has no connection to some sort of wider sinister plot. But I think we definitely need answers on this. I would hope that our relevant agencies, intelligence, Homeland Security, FBI, et cetera, are well aware of this, because if there is something sinister going on and this is connected to some sort of potential foreign plot, not to get way out over our skis, our government needs to know about that and protect others who might conceivably be at risk if there's something afoot.
Well, right, because Harris, to that point, you know, in law enforcement investigations, the whole point is to rule out. So you start sort of with everything and rule out. So at this point, any type of foreign espionage or all that kind of stuff, it hasn't been ruled out as they seek a pattern.
So I'm just curious about how hard it is to work a case like this when you have deaths in different states and you've got, you know, mysterious situations, you know, across the country in different areas with people. I'm looking here at MIT, NASA JPL engineer Frank Mawald, I think is how you say his name. That was 2024. These people are all over the place. So how do you do a top-down investigation and take a look at what the nexus of things that they have in common? That's difficult. So I think there are enough people missing or who've been murdered in mysterious ways or died in mysterious ways, or maybe we know how they died, but we don't know why. There are enough of them on the screen right now to begin some sort of a task force to pull this together to figure out what we're really looking at now.
And definitely Americans would be on board with that. That is exactly how our tax dollars should be stewarded.
Yeah.
I note, too, that perhaps in that way of research, you know, I don't know enough about the research to articulate it specifically, but to see perhaps, is it popping up in other countries? Has there been a development amongst our enemies in the fields of research that these now deceased or missing scientists were working on?
Yeah, and if they're missing, were they abducted by a nefarious actor who has them and is using them against their will in order to ascertain what level of expertise they might have that might help them? But I think Harris is absolutely right. And what this reminds me of is when you have victims in different areas who seem to die in different ways or, you know, mysteriously go missing, and then you realize you have a serial killer. But, you know, it takes a while to connect those dots, and you need a task force. You need a wider and more focused net in order to figure out, and it's harder when it's classified information, because in order to figure out if they were studying the exact same things, if they were working together, it's much harder to have the experts who also have that sort of clearance to be able to figure out, what the patterns are and what they were working on, if they knew each other, if they were working together, and what was it specifically about their field of study that would make them an attractive target for either, a terrorist organization or a rogue nation who wants that sort of information. Although General McCaslin's wife was very clear to point out on Facebook that he had no information about UFOs and to stop badgering her about that.
Poor thing. 10 is, frankly, an astronomical number.
Yeah, it's a big number.
And Kaylee, I wanted to come to you on sort of the process. As we showed Peter Doocy asking Caroline Leavitt questions, as former press secretary, what is the process of sort of digging into something like this when it's brought to the White House's attention, and the relationships with the agencies and the DOJ and the like? What might that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, a great point, and that's exactly where my head was at. She probably wasn't expecting that question, but impressive that it was on her radar, because it was a headline among many. In fact, our headline on this goes back to April. It's really interesting. There could be any number of reasons that someone would want to take one of these individuals. It could be specialized geopolitical knowledge, something like forced labor. It could be a state secret that someone's trying to get, or it could be nothing at all. It could be total and complete coincidence. But there is, in fact, a history of this kind of criminal activity. And you can go back to World War II and look at some of the stories. They're very interesting. But for Caroline, she did the right thing. She said, I'll go ask agencies. But with something like this, it's so sensitive. I imagine Kash Patel at the FBI is looking at each incident, looking to see if there's any connections between them. But this is something that she is going to have to repeatedly say, I will defer you to the FBI. It's a criminal situation, but it's one that she would dig into. I imagine she'd start at DOJ, she'd go to Kash Patel, and then go from there.
One thing that was a red flag to me, because it was not on my radar, frankly, until I got the info this morning. I saw the question that Peter asked. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I assumed maybe this is going to be older people who did a lot of research for a long time, and maybe they're in their twilight years at the end of their lives. Then I looked at the list of names and the ages, 40s, 50s, 60s. That's also a little weird here, isn't it? There are a lot of young people.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. All right, guys, well, we will certainly continue to follow this incredible and very mysterious story. Hey, everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.